Oh yes, saints, oh yes, saints. One songwriter communicates to my soul this Sabbath evening, and he dots down a soul-provoking musical content, and he says, oh, spread the tidings round, wherever man is found, wherever human hearts and human woes abound. Then he says, let every Christian tongue proclaim the joyful sound. The Comforter has indeed come. Let me put it to you this evening that salvation is readily available and accessible. However, the question is, have you indulged of salvation? Christ is forever available. Yet the question is, are you readily accessible so that Christ can come manifest in you? Oh, saints, in times like this, in times of darkness, in times of uncertainty, Prophet Jeremiah in Lamentations 3 verse 22 would say, it is of the Lord's mercies that we are not consumed. Great is thy faithfulness. Did you hear that? It is of the Lord's mercies. In other words, Prophet Jeremiah identifies the source of his sustenance and preservation, and it is the mercies of the Lord. In other words, saints, let me bring it to you and submit to you this evening that the source of your sustenance, the source of your preservation is divinity and not humanity. It is a result of divine intervention and not human significance that you have been preserved. However, the question would be, why? You see, we serve a God of intellect. We serve a God who does things rationally. In other words, he does things with intention. Now, the question is, why? Have you been preserved while others are dying like flies? Therefore, allow me to usher you, saints, into the dispensation of self-evaluation and introspection. The question is, why have you been preserved while others are being distracted? And I put it to you this evening that you have been preserved not for self-edification, but for divine glorification. In other words, you have been preserved to be an instrument of holiness and worship unto God, so that those who are lost might find salvation. Saints, without any further ado, let me salute you. Let me salute the mighty Albertonians. Let me salute the mighty Trans-Orange Conference in Alberton, the Adventist youth who stood when it was unfavorable to do so. Let me salute you, saints, in the name of the one who has sustained us from 2013 until 2021, and for eternity he shall preserve us. For we serve a God who does not work with quantity but with quality, and indeed the God of Alberton has vindicated us. I'm greeting you, saints, not in my name but in the name of the one who is older than his own mother, yet equal to his father. His name is Jesus Christ, Yeshua HaMashiach, the one who God has sent to save us and redeem us from our sins. Without any further ado, let us quickly go to the book of Psalms. The chapter is 61 and the verse is 2. David records and says, from the ends of the earth will I cry unto thee. When my heart is overwhelmed, lead me to the rock that is higher than I. Amen. When my heart is overwhelmed, lead me to the rock that is higher than I. Now, the setting is of paramount importance if we are to grasp the spiritual truth of this text. Now, David utters these words of desperation while he is being attacked by his enemies. And he says, when my heart is overwhelmed, lead me to the rock that is higher than I. Now, it was at a juncture and phase of human insufficiency and bankruptcy. Saints, it was at an epoch of distress and affliction where David sought divine intervention. And he says, lead me to the rock that is higher than I. When my heart is overwhelmed. However, my mental faculties are baffled by the environment and situation that necessitates David to seek divine intervention. Listen, he says, when my heart is overwhelmed. In other words, the insufficiency and bankruptcy of humanity to mitigate through the storms of life in the absence of divinity. David could not face his trials in the absence of his God. Let me say to you, saints, when life has pressed you down, when circumstances have crushed you, may those experiences conscientize you of your own insufficiency and incapability to go through the problems of life while isolating your Creator. For how can creation function in disconnection with its Creator? Therefore, may you be conscious of your inadequacy, and however, be conscious of the adequacy of the rock of ages. You are insufficient and incapable on your own. Therefore, saints, I present to you to present yourself unto God. Now, David says, I love it, he says, lead me to the rock that is higher than I. Now, this is the concept of altitude and attitude. David says, lead me to the rock that is higher than I. The concept of altitude and attitude. Now, what is altitude? Altitude is the position of an object in relation to the ground and sea level. Take note that the higher you go, the smaller objects appear. All of a sudden, an elephant looks like an ant. So David understood that your altitude will most definitely influence your attitude. In other words, when David says, lead me to the rock that is higher than I, he was simply saying, lead me to an altitudinal position that will make me realize how small and minor my problems are when I'm established on the rock of ages. When David says, lead me to the rock that is higher than I, David is simply saying, lead me to an altitudinal position that will make me realize how powerless and weak temptation and sin is when we're established on the rock of ages. David is saying, lead me, move me from my vulnerable point of defeat to a strategic point of victory, which is Christ himself. Saints, at times all that we need is a change in altitude, and we shall be preserved. May you be intact and aligned with your Creator and view life from his positioning, and you will realize that indeed all you need is to be established on the rock of ages. Saints, keep the faith and continue fighting the good fight of faith. God bless you.